If you're looking for an all-powerful superhero who can destroy whoever and whatever he wants but won't be burdened by the memory of his own darkness, then let us introduce you to the Sentry. The Sentry is set to make his big-screen debut in 2025's Thunderbolts, but just who is he? Introduced in 2000, he's often likened to Superman, though he isn't from outer space. Instead, he's an ordinary man named Robert Reynolds who ingested a special serum, a modified version of the one given to Steve Rogers when he became Captain America, in fact. Dubbed the Golden Sentry Serum, it was a result of research from both the Weapon X and the Super Soldier programs. Unlike Steve Rogers, though, Bob Reynolds didn't volunteer to receive the serum. Reynolds drank the serum believing that it was an ordinary experimental drug. At the time, he was a down-on-his-luck addict just looking for a fix, but instead he transformed into one of the most powerful superheroes ever. The Sentry is essentially a more grounded take on a hero with godlike powers. Like Superman, he has super speed, super strength, super stamina, super senses, and the power of flight. Unlike Superman, he can also become invisible and teleport, though he doesn't use those abilities as often. And also unlike Superman, the Sentry's superpowers appear to be pretty much limitless. He can travel well past the speed of light, and he also possesses the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. He's gone toe-to-toe with just about every powerhouse in the Marvel Universe, from the Hulk to Thor and Captain Marvel, defeating most of them with relative ease. According to Mr. Fantastic, the Sentry's powers qualify him as a so-called Omega-level threat, so it's no wonder that he's often considered Marvel's most powerful superhero of all time. The Marvel villain Molecule Man debuted in 1963's Fantastic Four issue 20, and to this day, he's still considered one of the most powerful baddies on Earth-616. He can reshape reality on a molecular level, rendering him essentially a living version of the Reality Stone.
Because of the accident, I have acquired the power to rearrange all molecules.
So, what does this have to do with the Sentry? Well, in addition to his incredible physical abilities, the Sentry also possesses the same powers as Molecule Man. Not only can he defeat nearly every other major hero and villain in the Marvel Universe, he doesn't even need to lift a finger to do so. And Bob Reynolds didn't even know that he possessed his ability until he faced off against Molecule Man. There is one catch though. Reynolds doesn't have much control over his reality warping powers, which is why we rarely see him using them. Not only is the Sentry among Marvel's most powerful heroes, he's also the hardest to kill, or harm in any way for that matter. He can be shot, stabbed, or blasted with energy, and yet none of it leaves a scratch. He can also fly directly into the sun, and still no harm will come to him. He's survived a nuclear bomb at close range, and he's been struck by Thor's hammer. If you can imagine it, chances are he can survive it. Like the Hulk and Wolverine, the Sentry also has an extraordinary healing factor, and it may just be stronger than any other comic book characters. So even if an assailant were to attack him at his weakest, his body could still heal instantly from the gnarliest wounds. In one infamous incident, Reynolds was seemingly killed by a gunshot wound to the head, only for his Sentry healing factor to kick in and allow him to fully recover within seconds. One of the things that makes the Sentry so profoundly powerful is that he no longer exists solely in one reality. That's because the Golden Sentry Serum shifted Bob Reynolds' molecules slightly out of phase with our time stream. The very nature of his powers appears to put him in constant contact with another reality, where more than 1,000,000 stars are constantly going supernova. And it's his connection to this universe that grants him his unlimited capabilities. It's no wonder then that the people say that the Sentry has the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, because he quite literally does. His connection to this other realm also confers him with a kind of cosmic awareness that few mortals in the Marvel Universe possess. Of course though, the truth is that Sentry isn't really immortal anymore.
Who are you?
I'm Bob.
The Sentry's source of power may be another universe where stars are constantly exploding and being reborn, but it's another power altogether that actually allows him to channel all of that solar goodness, the ability to absorb energy. This goes far beyond the likes of Bishop from X-Men, who can absorb and redirect energy attacks. The Sentry can physically absorb any kind of energy and use it to increase his power. While his primary power source is all those exploding suns, the Sentry can also literally draw upon any kind of energy. This means that he can drain energy from various sources, but he's impervious to just about any energy attack, be it Cyclops I-beams or a blast from Captain Marvel. And like those heroes, the Sentry can redirect absorbed energy with some powerful blasts of his own, which has helped him defeat numerous adversaries and annihilate entire cities. If everything we've mentioned so far sounds impressive enough, just wait, there's more! A Sentry can also bring the dead back to life. This was demonstrated for the first time in Mighty Avengers issue 6 when Bob Reynolds' wife Lindy is killed by Ultron. He touches her body and instantly revives her. But like many of its strange abilities, the Sentry doesn't seem to have much control over his knack for resurrection. Indeed, he was as surprised as anyone when he brought Lindy back to the land of the living. And in addition to being able to revive others, he can also apparently will himself back to life. The Sentry's toolkit isn't limited to physical powers, he also possesses some incredible psychic abilities. He's never been on quite the same level as telepaths like Jean Grey or Franklin Richards, but what he can do is nonetheless nothing to sneeze at. On the surface, these superpowers don't seem as impressive as the rest of the Sentry's repertoire, but his ability to manipulate minds is kinda scary. Not only can he sway the actions of people around him, but he's also able to erase memories on a wide scale, thereby eliminating any trace of himself from the minds of anyone and everyone he's ever encountered. In fact, with the help of Mr. Fantastic and Doctor Strange, Bob Reynolds was able to make the entire world forget that the Sentry ever existed, including himself. The Sentry has also demonstrated the ability to twist, implant, and retrieve memories. This one took a particularly meta turn when he filled the head of Sentry co-creator Paul Jenkins with all of his previous adventures. The fictionalized Jenkins didn't know where these ideas came from, but he nevertheless used them to create a comic book version of Reynolds that was published by Marvel Comics on Earth 616.
Wow. You just wrinkled my brain, man.
Perhaps the most out-there mental power in the Sentry's arsenal is his biokinesis. In other words, he can use his mind to alter a person's body chemistry and physiology. He's utilized his power to cure people's diseases without even touching them. In fact, just being in the general proximity of the Sentry can put a stop to devastating physical conditions. In Sentry Volume 2, Issue 6, Reynolds uses this power to help his therapist's comatose daughter, and all he had to do was step into the same room as her. But there's a dark side too. On one occasion, he actually did the opposite while in his alternate void identity, giving a young woman breast cancer with just a thought from hundreds of miles away. The implications of this power are mind-boggling, as Reynolds could potentially kill the entire population by delivering a plague of terminal diseases.
We're all gonna die!
If the Sentry can't be killed with conventional weapons, could his enemies simply wait until he perishes from old age? Fortunately for Bob Reynolds, he doesn't have to worry about that. Whereas the Super Soldier Serum dramatically slows Captain America's aging and allows him to remain youthful and vibrant for decades, the Golden Sentry Serum doesn't stop there. Indeed, it goes so far as to grant true immortality. The Sentry does not age and likely never will. The very nature of the Sentry and his darker half, the Void, means that he will always exist. Even if his life force is snuffed out by physical, psychic, or magical means, he will always reform somehow. His very existence is in fact part of the fabric of the Marvel 616 universe. There's no stopping the Sentry, and that's precisely why Reynolds chose to erase everyone's memory of him and wipe his own mind. That may sound drastic, but it was the only way to stop the Void. Superheroes are famous for helping the innocent, and the Sentry takes this to a whole new level. He can give his powers to other people. Other Marvel characters have similar abilities, like Rogue from the X-Men, who can absorb other people's powers. But the Sentry's capacity to voluntarily grant his abilities to others is unprecedented, especially for someone this powerful. On one occasion, the Sentry gave a teenager named Billy Turner some of his powers, essentially creating his own superhero partner, who took the name of Scout. He did it again when he gave his powers to a puppy who became his canine sidekick, Watchdog. He can also make other superheroes stronger by amplifying their own abilities. He's been known to recharge Iron Man's armor or provide the Hulk with the means to resist the Void. Though the Sentry hasn't used this power of transference very often, it might be the single scariest ability that he possesses. If, for example, he can grant an army the use of his powers at will, there's no reason then that he couldn't crown himself a galactic tyrant if he wanted to. So, once again, it's no wonder that he chose to wipe all knowledge of his existence from his own mind.
Who sent you, Bob?
Now that we've covered all of Bob Reynolds' powers in his Sentry form, it's time to dig into the dark entity known as the Void. This entity is unlike any other Marvel hero or villain, as it's not really a living being in any traditional sense. Instead, it's a force of the natural universe that has appeared throughout history as various demonic creatures, including the biblical angel of death. And it attached itself to Bob Reynolds once he became the Sentry. In some ways, the Void's presence is a dangerous universal threat, but it also serves as a necessary counterbalance to the Sentry. The Sentry is locked in an eternal struggle to keep the Void contained, and he doesn't always succeed. When the Void emerges, it takes control of Reynolds and is in many ways even more powerful than the Sentry. The Void has many of the same powers as the Sentry, while also adding a few other intriguing abilities. For example, it can shapeshift into any form that it desires. It can control the weather, is a far more powerful psychic with tremendous telepathic powers, and it can turn completely intangible at will. It's also worth noting that there's still some debate about the true nature of the Void, with some speculating that it might actually be a manifestation of Reynolds' own dark personality. Regardless, this is one Marvel villain you don't want to ever mess with.